and we don't have all the kit and equipment that we really need. And there are gaps around in the technology that our armed forces have. So, we will have some capability. Whether we have a watertight capability, as the Prime Minister says, I'm not so sure.
The US has had 4 balloons drift through its airspace in under a fortnight across almost the full length of the country, from Dead Horse, Alaska to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. One was the size of 3 buses. One was the size of a small car. Easily shot down, of course, but deciphering what on earth they were and what they were doing is proving much more tricky. US military search crews have been recovering debris, quote, significant debris from the site, including all of the priority sensor and electronics pieces identified in one case, they say. Michael Evans has been reporting on this for the Times and has the latest. Morning, Michael. Michael, hello. Spoke too soon. We'll turn to Kim Darroch, Lord Darroch, former British ambassador to the US and National Security Advisor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for your time. Is this, in the US, a military giant taking this in its stride, or do you sense a bit too much panic and confusion for comfort here?
I think at the government level, they're taking it in their stride. And the spy balloon, we knew the Chinese had these, and it's been shot down. They've recovered the equipment from it, so they can establish exactly what it was and how advanced technology was. The other 3, I think, unless stuff has happened overnight that I've not seen, are still mysterious. We don't know quite what they are or where they come from. But these are, in the end, balloons. An awful lot of surveillance goes on. A lot of it is done by satellite. Balloons are a cheaper way of doing it, and I guess because they're lower and they move more slowly, you get different kinds of intelligence from it. But this is stuff that just has been going on for years, so it's interesting. It's a good story. It's important, but we shouldn't be panicking about it. It's just part of the way the world is.
So your argument is the sort of hoo-ha is only because we all know about it at the moment, and it's, I guess they can be physically seen in the sky, but is your point that there are more concerning things or more things worthy of US intelligence's attention than these balloons?
I mean, the world's in a precarious place, and Ukraine war is something we've not seen for 5 or 6 decades. So there's plenty to be worried about. The intriguing thing about what's happening now is if there is some pattern or design behind this sudden proliferation of these sightings, or whether it's just that having seen that first one, which I believe was probably a mistake by the Chinese, which they initially apologized that it appeared in US airspace, they've now discovered these 3 more mysterious objects. And whether it's the fact they've been looking more closely or there is something else going on, is intriguing. I see Prime Minister Trudeau has said must be some link between them. I don't know, but it is quite striking that we've had this proliferation.
And is it your understanding that there's any added benefit for the Chinese? I mean, the US was saying overnight that they do understand that the People's Liberation Army is developing this kind of balloon technology for intelligence gathering. Is it clear to you what the utility in that is, if we already, as you say, have satellites and so many other ways of harvesting intelligence from each other?
Yeah, it's a little mysterious. I mean, what I know about them is, first of all, balloons are a much cheaper thing than satellites. So for a certain amount of money, you can put a lot more of these things in the air than you can with satellites. Second, because they fly in comparison to a satellite quite low, although much, much higher than a commercial aircraft. You can get some different kind of shots of photography and this kind of thing from them, and maybe there's more detail there or whatever. But it's still, I think, unless we discover something new, it's still well-known technology, and it's still basically surveillance. It's still basically spying, and the reality is an awful lot of that goes on everywhere.
And of course, understandably, I guess, that there's been some concern about our own readiness here in the UK, but were something similar to happen here. The Prime Minister was at pains yesterday to say that we've got a very watertight, rapid response that sort of intercept these kind of things. But we know that the US initially missed this balloon and have now said that they've adjusted radar to be able to follow these slower moving objects. Are you totally confident that we are as watertight as the Prime Minister says we are?
I'm not, to be honest, but I wouldn't want your listeners to get very worried about that. I'm not, because I think we have underinvested in defence for the last couple of decades, or I might argue ever since the end of the Cold War, and we don't have all the kit and equipment that we really need, and there are gaps around in the technology that our armed forces have. So, we will have some capability. Whether we have a watertight capability, as the Prime Minister says, I'm not so sure. But we have enough capability, I think, that people can certainly sleep easy in their beds about.
And just finally, Lord Darroch, of course, there's renewed focus on this intelligence battle between China and the West. The Telegraph this morning has on its front page news that more than 2/3 of drones operated by police forces in the UK are made by a Chinese firm blacklisted by the US. Do you think it's about time that we paid a lot closer attention to this kind of thing and undid some of the Chinese involvement in our infrastructure, especially in our police forces?
Yeah. National security communities, experts across the West, especially in America, but also in Europe and in the UK, are looking closely at China, and there is a lot not to like about China's posture. They're aggressive towards the West. They are threatening Taiwan with military exercises. They are militarizing the South China Sea. They're imprisoning Hong Kong activists. They're breaking international trade rules. So China needs to be stood up to and called out, and its activities monitored carefully. The other side of this, though, is that China is a central part of the international economic system. We all buy a lot from China, and we all trade a lot with China. China is crucial to finding a solution and reaching our objectives on climate change. So it's not economically irrelevant in the way that, say, Russia is. And we need to work out a relationship which both stands up to China on the things they are doing wrong, but allows us to work with them where we need to on things like climate change to solve these problems.
And we also know, in terms of what intelligence the Chinese might be gathering, TikTok, which is widely known to have links to the Chinese state, new analysis this morning has shown that it collects more personal information from your mobile phone than any other major social media or messaging app you might have. We've already on this programme heard from one MP saying that they've got TikTok on their phone. Should any of us be having TikTok on our phone if that's the case?
This is news to me, and my general attitude is that if you're out there on social media, you open the door, and what you have learned about TikTok is, of course, important and interesting. But I've always assumed that about any social media. Personally, I'm not on social media, but that's maybe because I'm a dinosaur. But once you open up yourself up to social media, you just basically have to assume that your communications are open.
Lord Darroch, thanks very much for your time. Former British ambassador to the US and national security advisor. As